Hi, my name is Dan and I'm one of the DT evangelists here at Digital-Tutors. In this video, we're going to look at a question from one of our users, JulianBT, on some tips for optimizing a render within MORE. Okay, so here I have a simple piggy bank object. Right now, if I were to render this out using MORE, we can see that it takes 3 seconds to render this. So it's a very, very quick render for this very simple object. Now, if I save this, and then select my object and add fur, say this squirrel preset here, to my object. We can see that just by adding this fur, take a look at the render time. It's up to 36 seconds now, up from 3 seconds. So by adding this fur, we've increased our render time very significantly just for this small object. Now, basically, when MORE renders, it's going to break up the render into tiles for each image. So, for example, say it would break it up into different tiles that are pixel-based height and width dimensions. Now, it'll assign a tile to a CPU core in order to render. And once that core is completed rendering a tile, MORE will then assign a new tile to the core, and so on and so forth until the render is completed. So depending on our scene, if one of our tiles gets assigned to one core and that tile contains an object with fur on it, as we can see from the simple example, adding fur can extend our render time quite a bit. So we could get some odd results if the rest of the tiles have completed rendering, but then the one tile or a couple tiles that have fur in them are still being worked on by 1 or 2 cores. Now, we can adjust how many threads MORE is going to use to render. When we come up to Render and go into the Batch Render options, we can uncheck this Auto Render Threads. Now, when it's set to Auto, MORE is going to try to determine how many threads you have on your system and use the optimal amount in order to get the render done as quick as possible. But you can override that by unchecking this and then entering in a number manually right there. Now, we can also adjust the tiling by unchecking this box here. Now, once again, MORE is going to try to automatically determine the optimal tile size, as it says right there in the tooltip. But we can uncheck that and then enter in a value here. Now, this value is going to be the height and width of each render tile. So right now it's 64. It's going to be a 64 by 64 pixel tile that gets assigned to each core. So depending on our project, we can adjust this tile size. So depending on what our project is, rendering is very project and scene dependent. And we may want to go in and adjust things like our tile size or even the number of threads that MORE is using in order to optimize our renders for a specific workstation. Now, if you want to dig in more in depth on some ways to optimize your renders in MORE, I'd recommend checking out the MORE Tips and Tricks course.